welcome back to The Journey, a podcast about relative faith in life, wouldn't you say?
I would say.
Yeah. You know, the idea behind what we're doing here is we want to, between Ray and I, we're both pastors in the United Methodist Church, we want to talk about things that are relative in as far as our faith, in Jesus, Christianity, if you want to look at it that way, and just what does it mean to really truly believe and then apply it to our life.
Sounds like a good conversation.
Well, one of the things we want to talk about today is what?
Let's talk about a little bit about Beatitudes.
There we go.
Because what got me thinking about that was I hear people sometimes talking about it as being commandments.
Okay.
But they're not.
True.
They're Jesus explaining. I mean, this is one of the times when we listen, we get a lot of times Jesus telling us a story to teach us something, but not always do we get that idea of, here, pay attention, here's what I mean. Like when we're looking at it, blessed are the poor in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, as you start off with that one, when you look at it, poor in spirit is not necessarily what we all think of it is.
I know. I used to, when I first became a Christian in my infancy and looked at that particular beatitude, I'm like, I don't want to be poor in spirit. You know, I think I'm not supposed to be as a Christian, you know. I'm supposed to be all happy and sunshine and everything, but that's not what he was talking about, was it?
It was not. And it has to do with you. Not you, but maybe you. And me. And our friends out there who are listening. And that whole idea of relying on yourself. Hubris.
Mm-hmm.
Of all those different kind of things and saying, okay, I'm in charge. I'm this. I'm that. And it's not necessarily that way. I mean, one way to interpret that idea of blessed is to say beloved.
Okay.
So Jesus could be saying, beloved are those who are poor in spirit. But poor in spirit doesn't mean bad. It's referring often within this context as being you are not being overly aggressive. You are not doing those things. You are, however, being within Jesus.
Kind of, would you say it's more like a humility type of thing?
It is.
You know?
Of being able and being willing to not be so assertive and so different things and do things your own way. Poor in spirit is that I'm going to allow Jesus to work in me, through me, and with me.
Yeah.
So, beloved are those who are allowing Jesus to work in them, through them, and with them. I mean, it's a neat way to kind of look at it.
That's a beautiful image, too. I like that. Of, you know, because, I don't know, I always go back to my own experience, you know, and it's like, you know, I used to be kind of arrogant and, you know, always wanted to do things my way and blah, blah, blah. But as a Christian, I've realized I don't have all the answers.
No.
And it's not about me, you know. So.
It's not about me. It's not about, yes. And
Right.
I mean, it's one of those kind of things. It's like, sometimes we get caught in a language trap within Scripture. Because it was written.
What do you mean?
Well, Scriptures were written a long time ago.
Yeah.
And language drifts a bit. Things that we interpret, we've got to pay attention to who they were written for, why they were written. What was Jesus doing that particular day, explaining those things that we refer to as the Beatitudes? You know, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Oh, that's a nice thought.
That is a beautiful thought. That if I'm poor in spirit, if I have the right And that's part of our relationship with Christ. So if I approach it that way and have that in my heart, then yeah, it's a beautiful picture of what the kingdom of heaven will look like, I think, to me.
Yeah. Another one on down in, where are we at? Down in 6 maybe. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Doesn't mean filled today, but perhaps having your spirit filled as you continue to work, working for hunger and thirst for righteousness, so that your spirit is filled over time as you're moving forward. Just things to think about. And I think they're kind of a neat way to look at it.
They are, for sure. The poor in spirit and those that hunger for righteousness. And I think one of them is blessed are the peacemakers.
Blessed are the peacemakers.
And that one to me is a little bit challenging. And what exactly Jesus was saying. How do you interpret that?
Well, I look at we're still back into that. Blessed are, so beloved are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Okay, so peacemakers, those who are looking at not causing violence, not causing strife. I also look at it for that whole piece of saying being kind. If you're somebody who's a peacemaker, you're being kind. You're loving your neighbor. You're doing the right things for the right reasons. And as you get to doing the right things for the right reasons, then you can be referred to as the children of God. You've embraced that family.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think I've interpreted it the same way pretty much, and I like the idea that God is really a peacemaker. He doesn't put up with sin, of course. He doesn't accept it or bend his holiness to afford humankind, but still his intention is for a very peaceful, loving, giving existence and relationship. And that's kind of the way I've seen that particular verse was, God wants me to, as made in his image, to follow his example of just following the truth and finding peace inside of the truth of God. And yeah.
Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they will see God.
There's a tough one.
Oh,
I don't know if I've ever been pure of heart, So when you read those and you, at least I do, I think to myself that, Jesus is one thing. Jesus is being the Son of God, being God in human form, and being able to speak these things about, peacemakers and pure in heart and all that. And it just makes me realize that, before old Joe gets to heaven, something's got to change, because if I get there the way I am right now, I'm going to blow it, because I'm not always the peacemaker. Okay. I'm not always the one that wants to, be humble of spirit. But I realize that is God's very nature. He is God, and he, all powerful, omnipotent, all those wonderful things. But his nature, if I'm going to spend an eternity with God, something's got to change. And I can look back and say, yeah, I'm not the same person, today that I was a year ago or 10 years ago. So I can see change, and I can see some for the better. But it just makes me look forward to that growing relationship in the future with God.
Good deal. Yeah. Well put. As we look at it, that whole thing in there, that being pure of heart, I look at that also as being part of our faith, that Jesus gives us sort of the ground rules, the things that, here are the expectations. If you're going to be a Christian, if you're going to be a disciple, if you're going to be doing this, here are the kind of things that you should be following through on. And your heart should be true or pure with those. You should look to be that disciple as Jesus teaches us.
So, let's say somebody that's wrestling with the Christian faith here in the 21st century, and, here we are in, West Michigan and whatever, how do you think they should look at those Beatitudes that Jesus preached about? Should they look at it and say, well, I'll never be able to measure up, so what's the point? Or, it gives me something to aspire to, or it's part of what God is going to do in my life, or how would you tell somebody who's just starting their journey of faith that this is the heart of Jesus that he poured out on the side of the hill that day?
I would still go back to that idea that beloved, blessed, beloved are those. So I think it's a part of that idea of trying, of blessed are the poor in spirit, trying to be humble, trying to do those kind of things. Blessed are the meek. Beloved are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Mm-hmm. As we look at it, beloved, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. I think those are the kind of things that, as we look at them, they are ways to say indicators of what we're doing, rather than where we get like the Ten Commandments out of a different part of the Bible. So it's here's what we should be doing. We should be poor in spirit. We should be merciful. We should be kind. We should be loving. We should be peacemakers at heart. We should be all those different kind of things today and moving forward. So what I would tell them is, these are the good guidelines to try and live your life by. Don't look for trouble in things. Look for the good. Don't or make sure that you're showing mercy to others. Beloved in Jesus. I mean, those kinds of things as we look at them.
It's kind of almost like, if you live according to these certain guidelines, that's what's going to come back to you.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like, if you are merciful, then you'll be shown mercy.
Yeah.
And like, okay, that makes sense to me. And if I hunger for righteousness, and then righteousness, hopefully, good things, God's will hopefully come my way, and just be one of those things that I can live into.
Fair enough. I like it. That's a good way to put it. A good way, if you're new into the faith, or if you're exploring your faith, that's a good way to look at it or perceive it within your own life, and looking out for your fellow humans is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Certainly Jesus modeled that for us, didn't he?
He did.
And the compassion that Jesus showed people, to me, was just unbelievable. And I'm just being honest here. There have been times in my life where I'm like, man, I don't want nothing to do with that person, and yet Jesus, he didn't have that problem. He looked at each person and said, I love you, and I created you, and I find value in you, and and I want to reestablish your relationship and with the Father and myself, and all of this stuff, and I look at myself sometimes and say, boy, I got a long way to go.
But you're on a path.
Yes, I am on a path. I am on a good path.
As are we all. There you go.
I am on a good path. We're all on a journey through this life, and that journey can be quite difficult. It can be extremely hard when we have more questions than answers, especially when it comes to our faith in God. Even though we're on a journey of life, we don't have to do it alone. Join us for the podcast, The Journey, posted fresh on all popular podcast platforms every Sunday morning. Or you can go to the toughquestionsforgod.org website. Thanks, and we'll see you then.